Is it me, or does anybody else feel like we're living in the end times of the games industry? I know that might sound a bit dramatic, but Jesus Christ, what is going on? Now, if you haven't quite caught up with the news just yet, yesterday Xbox announced, or they didn't actually announce, but it's sort of been leaked, that they will be shutting down 4 studios, which is Arcane Austin, makers of Redfall, Tango Gameworks, makers recently of Hi-Fi Rush, and also Alpha Dog Games and Roundhouse Games, which I believe are developers of mobile games. Now, not only does this come on the back of the ridiculous amount of redundancies and studio closures that we saw in 2023, but it also comes on the back of, I want to say Xbox got rid of like just under 2,000 employees earlier this year. I do my best whenever I see stories like this to kind of see both sides. And with Xbox especially, as somebody who has been there from the start, has had an Xbox Live account for over 20 years now, has stuck with this company or this brand or community, whatever you want to call it, through all of its ups and downs. Like, I keep waiting for them to turn a corner, and I don't think... It just feels like that corner's never going to come. And that's not to say that the games that they're putting out are bad or, terrible. I mean, I know Redfall wasn't great, but the studio didn't deserve to close down. Hi-Fi Rush was excellent, one of the best games of 2023, in my opinion. I have no idea why you would shut down Tango Gameworks. Like, I'm sure there is somebody over at Xbox that is crunching numbers or has an Excel spreadsheet open and says, look, this number isn't as high as we want it to be, and if we move these people over here, like, I'm sure this basically all comes down to numbers. Because it always comes down to numbers. It always comes down to, we need this percentage to be bigger than it was the previous year. That's always the game. It's not necessarily about making things sustainable, it's about growth. It's not about building a library of incredible or well-respected games. It's not about building a legacy of titles that will be held up for years and years and years. It is always about growth. That's the unfortunate side of things here. Or that's the unfortunate truth of all of this. Everything that you love about this industry is a product of somebody trying to make money, and while that is perfectly understandable and that is how the world works, there's a real ugly side of things to it when it's not necessarily just about, well, we need to make our money back. It's always about, we need to make our money back and more. We need to make double or triple our money back, otherwise it's not worth it. And I've said this in a previous video a while back when I was talking about Evil West. The budgets for this stuff now, the production costs of games nowadays is so high that everything is a risk. Everything is such a huge gamble. And the people who are backing this stuff, the people at the top, the investors, because this is an industry-wide problem, but Xbox is doing a particularly bad job of it at the moment. Nobody wants to be the guy who lost hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever. At the end of the day, most likely, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how high up you are in terms of like your position, like I'm not sure what Phil Spencer's title is nowadays. Is it just, I think it's just overall like head of gaming or head of Xbox or whatever. No matter how high up he is or how powerful he is, he has to answer to somebody. He has to report back to somebody and say, hey, look, I made the numbers go up. Like, we made more money this year than we did last. Like, he has to have those conversations. That has to be his goal. Just as it is with PlayStation, just as it is with, EA, Activision, Nintendo, like all of these. But the way in which Xbox is going about it is so bizarre in a way that it gives the impression that they're purposely trying to tank their reputation. The messaging and the general vibe that they're putting out there of all these studios that they've bought up, and they were talking about, building this giant Xbox family of the best studios in the world and doing this and putting out the best games with the best creators and giving people a platform. And now half of the studios they paid for with Bethesda, like, they're gone now. They're just done. Hundreds, if not thousands of people out of jobs. And meanwhile, they're spending like 70 billion on Activision. Now, I know those two things aren't directly, I'm no business expert. I mean, I do technically have a business degree, so I probably should be. But I'm no business expert. I'm no expert in sort of like finance, economics, any of that. I'm sure there is somebody at Xbox who can explain to me like, though, well, the money that we have for buying studios isn't necessarily the money that we have for paying, you know, the wages and salaries of the people who work at this studio. Like, I'm sure somebody can explain it to us in a way that they think justifies these decisions and they think makes sense. But from an outside perspective, Xbox is on an incredible run of making everybody around them, not just the people like myself or, you know, other consumers out there. They are on an incredible run of making everybody around them feel unsafe, unsure. It's tough because I'm trying not to be dramatic or trying not to sound dramatic when I'm talking about this topic. I'm trying to think why anybody would trust Xbox at the moment. Not to say that they can't do good work or they won't put out good work in the future, but more just when you're listening to them talk about all of their plans, all of their intentions, what's coming down the line and how excited they are for the future of this, that and the other. I'm trying to really think like, why would you trust any of that? And that's not to say that you take everything they say as an outright lie, but I feel like at this point, anytime they say anything now, I'm just kind of like, I hope it happens. I hope what you're saying comes to fruition. Like even in that internal email, the internal email that went out to employees that were being let go said something, you know, along the lines of, oh, we're doing this for growth, we're doing this so Xbox can have a brighter future and da-da-da. Like it's all, you know, it's the general speak that companies put out when they make redundancies. You know, we're trying to align ourselves for better growth in the future and blah, blah, blah. But this stuff keeps happening. We have now gone like a full 10 years of not feeling so confident in Xbox. That's not to say that I've not had a great time with their consoles and the games that they've put out, but just, good Lord. I don't even know. I don't know where you go from here. I don't know how people like Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond, like, what do they even say? Because they're going to be asked about. This has happened too frequently now that people are going to ask them questions about this in like interviews and when they show up at whatever their like version of E3 is, or anytime somebody gets them on a podcast, like they're going to have to ask these questions. And I can't think of a single way that you dance around that stuff without coming off completely like tone deaf and sounding like somebody who lacks a great deal of empathy. The most shocking thing to me now I think about it, I'm actually quite surprised that they've just fully shut down these studios and not redirected the people that worked there to focus on other projects or support some of their other teams working on upcoming projects. Like I know Redfall didn't do great and I think there's a bunch of DLC that people are going to miss out on now. Like that game's just fully cancelled. Who are the people who bought like the game of the year? Not the game of the year. The people who bought like the special edition. They're not getting anything for that now. Hi-Fi Rush, again, like I said, I think was one of the best games of last year. We won't see a sequel, most likely. We won't see any more like Evil Within or anything like that now. I mean, I'm assuming Xbox retained the rights to those so they could technically get somebody else to work on. But that's probably the most shocking thing to me is that they haven't gone, okay, we don't have faith in these titles, so we're going to redirect you. Instead, it's like, oh, we don't have faith in this. We don't see a need to have any of this talent at all. So we're just going to chop it off. Like 4 studios at one time is insane. I'm sure it costs a hell of a lot of money to run these things. I'm sure you have to pump so much money into them for so many years just to get one game out of them. But surely somebody has to weigh it up on the PR side and say, look, we've not put out a consistent level of quality games for a good while now. Our reputation, it's probably at one of the lowest levels it has ever been. We are very much third place in the console race. Like, we need a win. We absolutely need a win. We need to get people back on side. We need to make people feel like they can trust us. We need to give the fans in, you know, the community a reason to stick around and not just cash out and go buy a PC and a PS5. But Christ, I don't know. We'll see how this develops over the next few weeks and months. Like we're only a month away from their big sort of like summer showcase. In fact, like I wonder if they've tried to like get this out of the way now, and if their thinking was, let's do this now because in a month from now we're going to have our big showcase, we're going to show off a bunch of games and then we can sort of like get everybody excited again. We can get everybody back on board and we can sort of nudge this studio closure news story down the timeline with all of the things that we're going to announce in June. Part of me thinks that may be their sort of thinking on that one. And I could see why they would think that. It's not a good idea. It's not like a sound plan, but I can see how they've gotten from A to B if that is the case. And boy, you're going to get another video from me in June after that showcase, I tell you. Anyway, that's it from me. I just wanted to jump on here real quick and I suppose rant for however long this video is. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on what's actually going on here. If you have any insight, I'd love to know. But I'm going to get back to working on the other video that I was making. I'll see you on the next one.